What if I told you that the life you think is already decided is actually just warming up, quietly preparing for its most powerful chapter to begin today? Many people wake up in their 30s and 40s with a strange mix of gratitude and quiet panic, feeling as if the clock is ticking louder than their dreams ever did. They scroll through success stories of younger achievers and wonder if the door is closed without them even noticing. But science, psychology, and the lived experience of millions whisper a radically different truth. Your brain, your habits, and your identity are not fixed monuments. They are living systems designed to adapt, reshape, and rise again. Somewhere along the way, society created the myth of the deadline, the invisible expiration date stamped onto ambition. By 30, you should know. By 40, you should be settled. And by 50, you should stop dreaming so loudly. Yet history quietly laughs at that timeline. The human brain reaches emotional stability later than we once believed, and new neural pathways can form long after youth fades. Reinvention is not a rebellion against time. It is a collaboration with it. In the teachings inspired by Dr. Grandpa Henry, there is a simple but unsettling idea that often stops people in their tracks. He reminds us that the most dangerous lie is not failure, but the belief that the story is already finished. Think about how many people carry invisible versions of themselves: the musician who stopped playing, the writer who stopped writing, the entrepreneur who stopped imagining. These dreams do not disappear. They simply wait in silence. And silence can feel a lot like the end. But what if that silence is actually a pause, the deep breath before a second beginning? Researchers studying career reinvention found that adults who change paths later in life often bring deeper resilience, clearer priorities, and stronger emotional intelligence. They are less driven by ego and more driven by meaning. They waste less time trying to impress and more time trying to contribute. This shift is not a weakness. It is a superpower that only maturity unlocks. Still, there is a quiet fear that lingers beneath the surface. What if it is too late to learn something new? What if starting over means admitting you chose wrong before? What if the people around you do not understand the change growing inside you? These questions feel heavy because they challenge identity, and identity feels permanent even when it is not. The moment you begin to question who you are supposed to be, a quiet tension begins to rise. And that tension is where transformation secretly begins, because the truth waiting ahead is both liberating and uncomfortable. The person you are about to become will ask you to let go of the comfort you have carefully built, and a real question has not even appeared yet. It will arrive when you least expect it, and it will demand a courageous answer from you. The question arrives quietly, often on an ordinary morning that looks exactly like every other morning before it, and yet something feels different in a way that cannot be explained. You pour your coffee, open your laptop, begin your routine, and suddenly you feel the unsettling realization that you are no longer excited by the life you worked so hard to build. This moment can feel terrifying because it challenges the identity you have spent years defending. The career that once felt like progress now feels like repetition. The goals that once inspired you now feel like obligations. And the fear begins to whisper that change at this stage would be reckless, irresponsible, or even impossible. But neuroscience reveals something extraordinary that most people never hear. The adult brain is not finished growing, it is simply more selective about what it grows toward. When you focus on new learning, new environments, and new goals, the brain begins forming fresh neural pathways, proving that reinvention is not a fantasy, but a biological reality. Yet the suspense lies in the gap between knowing this truth and actually acting on it. Because starting over is not a single decision, it is a series of small, uncomfortable steps taken while uncertainty walks beside you. You begin to notice the voices around you, the subtle discouragement disguised as practical advice. People say, be realistic, be grateful, be careful, and their words sound loving but feel heavy. They remind you of mortgages, responsibilities, and the invisible rules of adulthood. The tension grows stronger because you begin to wonder whether your desire for change is wisdom or foolishness. This is where the real battle unfolds, not in the outside world but inside your own thoughts. Psychologists call this identity dissonance. the discomfort that appears when the person you are becoming no longer matches the person you have been. It feels like standing between two versions of your life, unable to fully return to the past, yet not fully confident about the future. Many people retreat at this exact point because the uncertainty feels louder than the possibility. But research on midlife reinvention shows something remarkable. Those who move through this discomfort often report the highest levels of long-term life satisfaction and purpose. The discomfort is not a warning sign to stop. It is a signal that growth has already begun. Still, there is a deeper fear hiding beneath everything. The fear of regret. The fear that if you try and fail, you will lose the security you built. Yet the more haunting possibility slowly emerges, the possibility of never trying at all. And as this realization grows, the suspense reaches its peak, because you begin to understand that staying the same may be the greatest risk you have ever taken. There comes a powerful moment when the fear of staying the same becomes heavier than the fear of change, and in that quiet shift something inside you begins to realign with possibility. You start to see your past not as wasted time, but as preparation, as a collection of skills, lessons, failures, and resilience that younger versions of you did not yet possess. Suddenly, the timeline that once felt like a countdown transforms into a runway, long enough to accelerate into something new. Research on adult development reveals that purpose often peaks later in life because clarity replaces comparison. You are no longer chasing validation, you are chasing meaning. This shift changes how you approach effort, risk, and persistence. Instead of asking what will impress others, you begin asking what will fulfill you. And fulfillment creates a deeper, more sustainable form of motivation than external approval ever could. The beauty of starting over in your 30s and 40s is that you are no longer guessing who you are. You have tested your limits, survived setbacks, and discovered what truly matters. Reinvention at this stage is not a reckless leap. It is a calculated evolution. Inspired by the philosophy of Dr. Grandpa Henry, there is a reminder that the second beginning is often stronger than the first because it is driven by awareness rather than illusion. The first chapter of adulthood is about proving yourself, but the next chapter is about expressing yourself. When you allow this idea to sink in, the fear that once paralyzed you begins to loosen its grip. You realize that starting over does not erase your past, it integrates it into a more authentic future. Every skill you learned, every mistake you made, and every obstacle you overcame becomes fuel rather than baggage. And when you finally take that first small step toward change, something unexpected happens. Confidence does not appear before action. It grows because of action. Each tiny step creates evidence that you are capable of moving forward, and that evidence begins to rewrite the story you once believed about your limitations. Momentum builds quietly at first, then powerfully. The life you thought was behind schedule suddenly feels right on time. You understand that success never had an age deadline. It only had a courage requirement, and the courage you need has been quietly growing inside you for years, waiting for permission to be used. The second beginning stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a responsibility to the person you are becoming. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.